I want to take you back about 30 years ago to when I was in high school. There were three rituals in my day that were really important to me. Number one was checking in with my high school sweetheart. You know how it goes, young love. Number two was checking my email. And that was a pretty new thing for me at the time. So it was still exciting to get email, even if it was just somebody's terrible jokes or conspiracy theories or whatever. Number three was having my daily can of Coca-Cola after school. Just one, because that's all I was allowed to have, but man, did I look forward to having a Coke. And that's not a euphemism for anything, by the way. I mean that sickly sweet, nutty battery acid that comes in a red can that pops when you pull the tab. I loved drinking Coke, particularly cherry Coke. I wasn't so wild about Diet Coke at the time. And I couldn't stand Pepsi or RC Cola or any of the other pretenders to the Coca-Cola throne. It had to be the real thing. And if you didn't know, that was what Coca-Cola actually called itself back then. They even had this commercial jingle, "Can't beat the real thing." So one morning, I was wandering around the school library and I happened to notice this book with a very familiar red and white logo on the cover. The Coca-Cola logo. And this book was all about the history of the rise, fall, and revival of Coca-Cola as a brand. I remember picking it up off the shelf and just standing there reading. I was so absorbed, I almost missed my first class. So I checked it out and took it with me. All day while I was supposed to be working on assignments, I was sneaking time to read that book. I just couldn't help myself. It was like uncovering the secrets of the universe. I learned that Coca-Cola had specially engineered its original glass bottles to be so distinctive in shape and feel, you could find one in the dark just by touch alone. I learned that Coca-Cola was responsible for popularizing the image of Santa Claus in a red coat with white trim. I learned that Pepsi-Cola had twice been so down on their luck, they tried to sell their company to Coca-Cola in 1923 and 1931. And both times, Coca-Cola refused to buy them. I learned the entire story behind the Cola Wars, including the inside story behind the Pepsi Challenge and how it led to the release of New Coke in 1985. But most important of all, I learned the secret of Coca-Cola's success. And no, it's not their secret formula, at least not the one that they famously keep in a vault. So let's spill some tea, soda, over one of the most famous and recognized brands in the world, Coca-Cola. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. The history of Coca-Cola is absolutely fascinating, and how it evolved from being a snake oil, cure-all, cocaine-containing remedy sold by creator John Pemberton in the 1880s to a sugary soft drink sold by Asa Griggs Candler's Coca-Cola Company and later by Atlantic Steel under Ernest Woodruff is all well worth taking some time to learn about. As far as I'm concerned, learning about Coca-Cola's innovative marketing techniques is like learning about the history of product marketing itself. After all, Coca-Cola has never been a product anyone needs to buy. It's a product people want to buy. And the many ways in which the Coca-Cola Company convinced the world that it was something for everyone is captivating. But what I want to focus on today is Coca-Cola's secret formula. So let's first go over the story. At the World of Coca-Cola Museum in Atlanta, Georgia, there is this closed vault that is supposed to contain the secret formula to Coca-Cola. It was set up for public viewing at Coca-Cola's 125th anniversary in 2011. The company claims that only 2 employees are permitted to know the recipe inside the vault at the same time. Now, who these 2 employees are is a secret too, but there is one tell. They're not allowed to travel together, so if one of them dies, the survivor can choose a successor to share the recipe with. Now, I know this all sounds like some Star Wars Rule of Two, Sith, Master and Apprentice stuff, but it's the official story we're all supposed to believe. And guess what? It's also a myth Coca-Cola made up for the purposes of marketing. The truth is most of the so-called secret recipe for Coca-Cola has been known for decades, and more than 2 people must know all of it because about 20 years ago, in 2006, a high-level secretary named Joya Williams approached Pepsi-Cola and attempted to sell them the secret recipe for $150,000, and she had 2 accomplices. So PepsiCo contacted the FBI, they ran a sting operation, and all three conspirators wound up in jail for attempting to sell trade secrets. So even if they can't legally do anything with that information, that means there are at least three people outside the Coca-Cola organization who know the secret formula. But there's also three very probable recipes that are available in printed public sources, and nobody went to jail for those. The first is John Pemberton's original recipe, which has an ingredients list but doesn't contain the quantities of flavoring oil or instructions on how to mix things. And it also includes a mysterious flavoring called Merchandise 7X, a mixture of essential oils of orange, cinnamon, lemon, coriander, nutmeg, neroli, and a quart of alcohol. The second one comes from a book published in 1968 by Joseph Marary, and it provides much more detail than Pemberton's handwritten recipe, but it also includes cocaine as an ingredient, as well as some ingredients like lime juice that are no longer used in the official recipe. The third came from the public radio show This American Life in 2011, and it was found in a reproduction of a book called Everett Beale's Recipe Book that contained a recipe similar to Pemberton's, but with some improvements. This version also crucially included the precise mixture of the flavoring oils, but did not specify the mixture method. It also included lime juice as an ingredient, so it might not be right. But there's another story as well. Charles Howard Candler, the son of Asa Griggs Candler, said his father once showed him the secret recipe and there was no written formula at all. Just unlabeled bottles that were mixed by sight, smell, and location on the shelf. Not that it matters. One of the key ingredients of Coca-Cola is spent coca leaf extract, a non-narcotic flavoring Coca-Cola has the exclusive right to import from Peru and Bolivia through a deal with the DEA. With that said, there have been numerous attempts to reverse engineer Coca-Cola or create homebrew recipes, many of which are purportedly pretty close. There's even a movement called Open Cola, where recipes are published and the creators encourage people to use them. But the siren's call of somehow stumbling upon the exact set of ingredients that will allow an average Joe to replicate Coca-Cola's secret formula is also a fool's errand, because even Coca-Cola doesn't stick to its secret formula. It's made many subtle adjustments to the recipe over the years, as well as some not so subtle ones. One well-known example is, of course, the introduction of New Coke in 1985. It was a sweeter version of the formula intended to compete with the growing popularity of Pepsi's flavor. It was also a colossal failure that led to Coca-Cola reintroducing Coca-Cola Classic and eventually quietly discontinuing New Coke a few years later. But the year before that, 1984, both Coca-Cola and PepsiCo made a less visible change, replacing cane sugar with high fructose corn syrup, or HFCS. Cola fans gradually noticed that Coca-Cola in other countries tasted different from what they were used to, and bottles of cane sugar sweetened Mexican Coca-Cola started appearing in parts of the country. Now, Coca-Cola eventually took over the importing of Mexican Coca-Cola into the United States, and it's actually not that hard to find it now, just expensive. In fact, the Trump administration has even been pressuring Coca-Cola to return to using cane sugar domestically. And just last month, the Coca-Cola company announced it was launching cane sugar sweetened Coca-Cola in select US markets. Now, there is an irony in all of this, of course. Donald Trump famously drinks Diet Coke, not Coca-Cola, so he probably wouldn't even notice the difference. But the bigger reason Coca-Cola has resisted the change is because cane sugar is in shorter supply than HFCS and also costs a lot more. And for what it's worth, the reason Mexican Coke tastes different from American Coca-Cola may have more to do with how it's produced and bottled than anything else. It still comes in glass bottles, while the American versions tend to be sold in cans or plastic bottles. The container can have an impact on the taste. Metal cans absorb some of the flavor, and plastic bottles leak a small amount of acetaldehyde into liquid. Both are also semi-permeable when it comes to containing gas. Glass is better at two things. It doesn't change the taste, and it does a good job of holding in carbonation. But also, the shape of the container plays a role in how the soda hits your tongue. And Coca-Cola's complex flavor really benefits from hitting multiple parts of your mouth at once, so the fizziness of the drink, the acidity, the spiciness, the bitterness, and the sweetness all hit at once. Beyond all of that, there's one more thing Coca-Cola has, and it's branding. Coca-Cola has spent such a long time building up a simple, iconic brand that it's one of the most recognizable and preferred brands in the world. People see red and white and they think Coca-Cola. I don't even have to get fuzzy about this, by the way. Neuroscience can prove my point for me. So, a 2004 paper titled Neural Correlates of Behavioral Preference for Culturally Familiar Drinks had 67 research participants taste Coca-Cola and Pepsi in taste tests while using an fMRI brain scan. The study found that when participants didn't know the brand, they were generally unable to identify their favorite brand better than a coin flip, and a little over half preferred the flavor of Pepsi in the taste test itself, regardless of their preference. But when one of the cups was clearly identified as containing Coca-Cola, 75% of participants chose Coca-Cola, with some even doing so if they'd originally said they preferred Pepsi. But even more important is that the medial prefrontal cortex lit up. That's the part of the brain that has to do with the emotions, cultural memories, and self-identity. Another paper from 2017 called The Pepsi Paradox, a review, looked into why Pepsi tends to be preferred in blind taste tests, but Coca-Cola tends to be preferred in branded taste tests. After reviewing numerous studies, the authors concluded that taste tests are too artificial to have any true scientific validity, and that other factors we've already discussed, the container, the sweeteners, the distribution, and the brand itself, are likely to have a larger influence than taste alone. In other words, another win for great marketing and branding. So the true secret to Coca-Cola's success isn't in how it's made. It's how it triggers memories and associations and feelings that you're not just drinking a brown, fizzy, sugary serving of liquid, but that you're enjoying something that can be imitated but cannot be replaced. Something Coca-Cola has long insisted is the real thing. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been the Marketing Gateway. See you next time. Today's plug is for soda, and no, not just Coca-Cola. I actually don't drink Coca-Cola too often anymore because of all the sugar. And no, Diet Coke and Cherry Coke Zero don't really do it for me either. These days, I'm a Diet Mountain Dew man. But let's talk about soda for a moment, or pop, or soda pop, or Coke, or fizzy drink, or whatever you call it from where you're from. You see, carbonated beverages originally gained popularity as a health food, an alternative to drinking potentially toxic still water and various forms of alcohol. Naturally carbonated water was highly prized as a luxury item until people figured out how to make it with chemical reactions or with machines. That's why pharmacies in the 19th century tended to have soda fountains and would mix medicines and sugary syrups into carbonated water. The effervescence of soda was meant to make the medicines more effective. Soft drinks became extremely popular during the temperance movement, and it wasn't until alcohol was actually outlawed in the United States in 1920 that drinking soda really began to take off as a major alternative to getting sloshed. A century later, soda's a pretty common beverage, and enjoyed in moderation, sipping a cold soda is still an incredibly nice and inexpensive way to unwind and relax. So if you find yourself stressed out or in need of a moment to do something kind for yourself, grab a can or a bottle or a fountain drink of your favorite variety of soda and enjoy.